All right, we are live, October 9th, 2024, 9 p.m. I'm going to open up phones momentarily. That's 33rd degree, Lucifer Tim. And I can see from the chat here, Armin Ree has reported that he has a video rendering. So if you weren't able to join earlier, we did the first episode of the IPS Deep Think Tank, which is meant to be about an hour to 90 minutes of voice chat and Discord, open to any topic. And I think we went over that today. We probably went into like 2 hours. But we're going to record these twice per week. That was the first one. And I send out the invites via email, if you're subscribed to IPS, or if you're on the Discord, just get into the app and get notifications. So that's episode 1. It's rendering now, so I will play it on my channel, and it will go through the regular archive channels. So any of the podcasts are going to pick it up. And we're just calling it the IPS Deep Think Tank, and that's episode 1. And it's going to be twice per week. And I think it's going to help generate a lot of the ideas and content we're going to need for the AutoHoax Con. The second of which is going to be on the 26th. So if you have any sort of interest in presenting or attending, just make sure you subscribe at ips.monster and you'll be in the know. LG Rhythm sent me a DM on X. Okay, I'll look into it. Roxy says low audio. Let me see if I can fix that. I'm thinking about revamping my entire setup here. As in, not sure yet exactly, but I want to make the studio something that can be used for, of course, in-person guests, interviews, but we also want to make it visually, as far as the graphics and everything else. We want to bring it up to standard. We're kind of behind the times in that regard. Okay, audio has been checked, and no, it's as high as I can make it go without annoying the people across the hall. Unlike my office is sandwiched between, I think it's like a masseuse and a psychotherapist. And I don't know what the other group is. And then there's this. Anyway, I try to be courteous. Yes, Patricia Steer says, the singer's name you played to open used to be Psychedelic Christian. Then he changed to Lucifer Tim. I interviewed him, hung out at Oxford College in 2016. Yeah, he's a incredible musician. And he sent other tracks, and his lyrics are incredible. The videos are great. Very enigmatic and interesting individual. I was hoping he would come down for one of the conferences. But yes, that would be the artist. And I'll make these tracks available. I already have them on Patreon, but I'll make a point. But we are going to improve audio. We are going to improve video. I was testing out video tonight, and I turned it on, and it just froze. 1 frame. So that's obviously a technical issue I can get into. There's a gremlin in one of the wires here. All right, let's see who's here else. Portal Complex. Oh, by the way, the new podcast, IPS Deep Think Tank, we're using Portal Complex's intro that was going to be for Conspiratainment Radio Network. And we're using it for this. So you're going to hear that tonight or tomorrow. Ahoy Mateys says, observing reality. Diana South is here from D-Live. HBIC, ears up. K-Ways, thank you for joining. Poncho Lefty. And also, if you want to call in and you can't, if you're just too far, you can't call, it's too expensive, whatever it happens to be, I can open up Discord. And that's another reason why we're doing this Discord session, is that a lot of people who can't call in can be heard. Frugal Snowbird says, yo. LAC says, hi. Let's go. Sean Dexter, thank you for joining. Okay, I think we've crossed the threshold here. It's pretty quick. Yeah, these think tank videos are going to be good, and they're going to get better as we go. Sean Dexter, how do we explain the prevalence of predictive concurrent programming regarding these weather events? Yeah, I was thinking about Twister. Months ago, I said, hey, look, the summer is going to be the summer of Twister. They're going to do something with weather. And I don't know if that movie overtly made mention of climate change, but they certainly did prepare us for this. And someone else had pointed out that the Penguin has a reference, and it constantly goes back and it shows you the flood. Like this week, they're showing the flood scene that we saw in the Batman movie. What's really terrible about this situation is that it's being exploited mostly by appallingly right wingers. The people who are against climate change alarmism have become the worst type of weather alarmists. And they're saying, oh, this was caused by cloud seeding to kill off white voters or something silly like that. Or this was some kind of government run thing. And I often point out that there is this perfect schism between left and right with regard to the weather. And the left will say, oh, this is climate change caused by the private sector, by your freedom. And the right will say, no, this is caused by the government and it's a secret program. So both sides agree that it's worse than usual. So they both agree on the premise, and that's a real problem. Speaking of predictive programming, I'm reading a book called Dark Path by Isaac Weishaupt, who's a podcaster that I listen to occasionally, and I found one of his books at a Goodwill. And it looked like whoever had it before me was probably into some dark stuff because it had some candle wax on it and the corners were burnt. But anyway, I found some interesting quotes. Here's from Real Time, Bill Maher, January 2016. He said, I always want to say, if you want to know what's going to happen, watch movies from 20 years ago. Everything that happens in a movie is going to happen. Now it's like 2 days ago. Like, watch what was on TV yesterday if you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. But, I don't know if he's being ironic and he's an insider or if he's just right because he's being ironic, but it's quite literally true. A couple of other points here from the same book, The Dark Path. There's a sequence of Lil Wayne and Big Sean in a video called My Homies, and it has a movie theater full of skeletons, and it shows images of Batman and Joker. This also ties into the timing of its release, just before the shooting in Aurora, Colorado, with the Batman Dark Knight Rises, where you had the Joker shooter. And apparently, there's more to it even beyond this. And so I'm going through this collection of examples of predictive programming that involve the Batman universe, which is something we've been talking about a lot lately. It says we saw the term Aurora inside the Batman Dark Knight Rises film. We also saw a map in the film where a man points to an area called Sandy Hook just before the 2012 mass shooting. A film called Dream House in 2011 had a man with a business card for a psychiatrist named Dr. Greeley located in Sandy Hook. So we see a connection here with the mental illness of the Aurora Theater Sandy Hook shooters connected with the psychiatrist in Dream House. Not a smoking gun, but this begs an acknowledgement of strange coincidences. Great book so far, and a lot of great research has gone into it. It's called The Dark Path, and again, you could probably find it on Amazon. Now, here's an example of how this mind war is split. Ghost Gone tweeted this: Joe Biden says the federal government doesn't control the weather. If this is the case, why are Americans paying carbon tax if it can't be changed? And so his implication is that we can change the weather. And the idea of climate change, of course, is a left-wing orthodoxy. But the implication is, again, private sector and government. This is mind control. That's why I don't take sides. Sure, we might have a real situation, but the way they dress it up with deep fakes and exaggeration. And let me show you an example. This is insane. There was some TikToker who was a little worried about what she was going to do with her dogs and her children. And she kind of ranted about it for a moment. And Benny Johnson, who gets paid $100,000 a week by Putin to push propaganda, he's one of those guys connected to Tenet. So he shares this and he says, can you put me in contact with this girl? I'll pay for her family's lodging through the hurricane. So he puts her on blast to 5.5 million people. While she responds to this, apparently she says that she wasn't trying to make a clout video and she wasn't in danger. She just kind of got taken out of context. So in other words, she was used as a crisis actress for Benny Johnson to kind of white knight over, and she didn't really appreciate it. Although she didn't complain when people wanted to send her money on Cash App. So I wonder, maybe the two of them are in on it. Now here's a picture from space, if you believe in outer space, as presented by NASA. I mean, I believe in up. I believe that it goes up. I don't know how far, but I don't believe anything that I see from up there represented as having come from space because I don't trust them. They tricked the world last year with a piece of salami, which they superimposed over a nebula, and they said it's a new star. The world fell for it and marveled at it, and then they said, no, actually, we were just clowning you. This didn't really come from the $10 billion James Webb telescope. That's a million miles away, so you can't get a refund. Like, we pay for this. But this is a joke. So here's the hurricane from outer space, and it's got a pixel. Like, that's some kind of a digital glitch. Space doesn't cause this. It's like you go really high and you get these anomalous green screen glitches. No. They're recording off of a screen. I'm pretty convinced that they have the scale model and they're superimposing a screen, maybe one of those surround screens like they used in the DeLorean. It's like the next stage. The green screen is just old tech. The new tech is the room where every surface is a screen, and it creates a immersive effect that's really foolproof. LG Rhythm says, only thing that's fake about the hurricane is the loaded storytelling around it. Oh yeah, it's insane. It's actually what they're doing is pretty kind of it, it's like Gretaism. So both sides are guilty of it. Patricia Steer says, my air conditioner's on its legs. Had an AC guy here, got a new system. He said next year they're making people use propane coolant in new AC units due to climate change. Flammable, wow. Yeah, last legs is what I figured. That's probably, well, this shows you the power of it. You know, the power of this. Like, we're doing this for Gaia. That's why I say, if you don't believe we're in the end times, you're not believing the science. Eddie F says hurricanes happen in real life every year. Yeah, think about this. If your sole perception of it is through the screen, unless you're in the immediate area, and those in the area are evacuated, I don't think it's far-fetched to think that they could add a little bit to it. And we have seen reporters lean into fake wind. These reporters will kneel in a puddle of water and pretend like they're in a flood. They're liars. That's what they do for a living. You've seen these reporters where they're 45 degrees as though they're facing against some kind of a wind. The cameraman is shaking the camera, and you look in the back, and there's some elderly couple walking a poodle crossing the street like nothing's wrong. So I don't put it past them to exaggerate the weather. They exaggerate everything else. They want you to believe that the ocean levels have risen. And I concede 1 millimeter, and that's just based on the estimated 57 million tons of PPE left in the oceans after 2020, 2021. Ironically, by the same people who believe in climate change. That's their waste. That's their PPE islands. Ted Striker 2112 says some businesses lost power 23 times because of Milton. Who counts that? The FEMA stories are fake, highly exaggerated. There are stories of it smelled like bodies. It's like, no, there's other explanations. Exaggerated body counts. Just like a month ago, they're like, yeah, the Hells Angels are running to Aurora to fight off the Venezuelan gangs to defend Crips and Bloods. And then at the same time, the longshoremen are tired of transporting children in those big crates because they can hear them scratching at the walls. Like, this is fan fiction. And a lot of this anti-FEMA stuff is fan fiction. Second-hand accounts, third-hand accounts. Are they messing with the weather? No. See, here's what the thing. They want two. They want the two factions to agree on something. They want both factions, left and right, both wings of the bird, need to agree that man is effing up the weather. They don't care what your interpretation is. They don't care if you believe in climate change. God caused climate change, geoengineering. Like Bill Gatesophobes think it's HARP and chemtrails and cloud seeding. They don't care as long as you believe it's worse than it really is. And they accomplish this through the media and through a lot of crisis actors hyping it up. So no, it's always exaggeration. It's part of the build up towards the collective, as in everybody on Gaia has to agree that this is the unifying threat. It's not the alien invasion, it's climate change. And then who's to blame for climate change? Keep that in mind. It's not caused by government, it's not caused by secret government or Bill Gates. No, it's going to be blamed on carbon super spreaders, consumers. It's a byproduct of our political and economic system. In other words, freedom is not sustainable. And before the lockdowns, back in 2017, back when Bezos was still in charge of Amazon, he said that if you want freedom and liberty, you're going to have to go to space. Because here on Earth, we're going to adopt a civilization of stasis. He actually said this as part of a speech. It was in Wired magazine. A civilization of stasis. That we're going to need some kind of authoritarian control or the planet won't survive. So if you want to be free, you got to go to space. That is revealing. Not hard to find. Not many people talk about, let's go into a civilization of stasis. If you just search it, you'll find it. LG Rhythm says, it's just a storm, but the media's made it into a big movie production as they do. The next minute, though, uninsurable homes, uninhabitable homes. Oh, look at all the Go Fraud Me grift. So there's one person who was saying that she's a nurse and she's having a hard time trying to read the accounts of what the victims have posted on TikTok, and she saw a screen cap of a TikTok on a Twitter account. So she's reading this fourth-hand information, pretending to choke up and cry. And then she's like, you can donate to my GoFundMe here. And I have a spreadsheet, and I'm trying to figure out the wiring information for the fire departments there, and I will get the right money to the right people because I have spreadsheets. So this crisis actress sitting in a nice home, nice weather, is taking advantage of the situation to raise money. And people are falling for it. People fall for crisis actors all the time. And it's because you call out a crisis actor, you're called a conspiracy theorist. Well, it's emotional manipulation. Let's see here. But yeah, it's bad enough. Let's see, IFEPA says, storming pretty hard by me right now, heavy rain and winds, thunder, lightning. Yep. Okay, let me open phones right now. Leo Pirate's going to call in. Been finding some interesting connections between Megalopolis and right now, what's happening, and Trump, and the whole Palestine, Ohio thing. But I was looking into this movie, Megalopolis, a little bit deeper, and I want to go over some of these details. One of them is that Francis Ford Coppola was hanging out with Robert De Niro when he said his movie's prescient, it's America as Rome, and the events in the movie are about to come true in a few months. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, it's Leo Pirate.
Hey, what's up, Leo? Thank you for calling.
Yeah, just calling in. And so I posted this in the chat. I think it's in the Gilded. I hate posting my own content, but it's kind of crazy. So much like how you analyze media fakery through the lens of predictive programming, how predictive programming is compelling evidence for media fakery or some kind of metascript narrative, I have been analyzing, I guess, something similar, metascripts in false American Christianity. I've been looking at Jehovah's Witnesses, evangelicals, Mormons. I've been studying it over the years. And the clip I posted is from over a year ago for one of my streams. And it's this evangelical pastor who, this video has over, I think, 300,000 views at the time. He was basically arguing that it's the one above. That's a source video, but the one above is like my very condensed, like 3-minute analysis of it. But in this video, this pastor over a year ago was arguing that the support of Israel is the cause of so many of the different weather disasters that have been happening. He cited a book called Eye to Eye, where he basically makes the case that what happened with Hurricane Katrina, and was timed with when the UN tried to give a two-state solution for Israel. And I was pointing out, like, this is a huge aspect to the metascript, the religious angle, because I think so often, people, there's the left-wing view, it's climate, it's Gaia, we have to make sure we protect Gaia, and the right-wing view, it's the deep state. I think there's like a third position that's going to unify both, and it's going to involve the conflict in the Middle East.
Interesting. Well, I have noted here that there seems to be this build up towards unification on a number of issues. So, for example, both sides have accepted the existence of mind viruses, which means that both of them are going to be susceptible to claims of we must do something about unregulated free speech because the mentally ill hear these things and they go shoot people. So both sides are agreeing that mental illness caused by SSRIs are causing these shootings. The left is saying it's caused by gun culture, but anyway, it's unified. And then I'm noticing on this climate thing, both sides are blaming the weather on man, but one side blames private sector, the other blames secret government. But they both agree, just like with Maui, with the whole Lahaina fire, they both agree that something is up that's out of the ordinary, and that's the premise that I reject.
Well, that's something. It's interesting you bring up mind viruses. Again, it's not explicitly stated in the clip, and you don't need to play it during the stream. Maybe you can watch it afterwards. It's short. But anti-Semitism is a mind virus, in effect, and that's kind of the idea I'm trying to get at is what might be pushed. Whereas before, anti-Semitism is seen as hateful, racist, whatever. In the future, it might be seen as dangerous for the safety of the nation from a weather perspective. I know that sounds way out there and crazy, especially for a non-religious audience here. And for me, even though I am Christian, I do not subscribe to that view at all. It's ridiculous. But know that that narrative is out there, and it's curious that anti-Semitism is a huge. I mean, like that's. I think that everyone would agree that's like a mind virus, whether you're right or left. Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider this because see, there's this conversation that Musk started with a woke mind virus, and I found his source book, and it's like called like the Mind Parasite or something, and it's not as good as Richard Brody's Virus of the Mind, but he mostly focuses on leftism as a mind virus, which is true, but it's also true of the other side. And so when you say that anti-Semitism's a mind virus, it really is, by all definitions, in the exact same way that critical race theory is a mind virus, where it's a worldview centered around we figured out who's at the top of the pyramid, who's the oppressor. It's a very basic scapegoat story, but I think I call them critical Jew theory versus critical race theory. I think these are both mentalities that they promote to the fringes, and I think they're both equally invalid. And it's just amazing how many people fall into these traps. But it's nice to have a scapegoat. I think that gives them some sort of sense of purpose.
It's a bifurcated psyop for sure. And I love how you always identify the two poles, right? Like the two sides that they're both of them look at what they both assume is true. And yeah, both of them assume that mind viruses exist and are dangerous. And the only reason why I'm calling in, so I can kind of end, is that there is certainly a religious angle to this weather weapon psyop as well. To the whole guys, you need to worship a certain way or hurricanes.
Well, did I
So
tell you the other
I'll let you
day?
check it out.
I said Noah versus Noah. Take your pick. You either blame God, Noah from the Bible, or National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration tells you it's caused by man through capitalism, which is the counterpart to wickedness. But I'm saying that this is a modern flood myth attached to predictable disasters. And that's the key point here. It's predictable. They take advantage of stuff that's already going to happen, and they make it worse. And we've seen many examples. You've seen these reports where the journalists or the reporters out there and they're acting like they're fighting a storm, but the background doesn't quite match up, like they're overacting it. They crisis act the weather. That's how low they've been for a long time, and now they have better special effects than ever.
And rather than relying only on anchors in the wild, now they got TikToks, now they got shorts, they got tweets from people. It's. I've been trying to alert my younger audience about how psyops extend far beyond just the news. It's in tweets, it's in YouTube videos, it's in TikTok influencers. It's more on the ground than ever.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things that I detected, it was like last year, I noticed that a lot of the top tier right wing influencers, a lot of these ones who are supposedly funded by Tenet, they all started saying the same thing. They would all be posting videos of subway violence, and they would say, get out of the cities. And everyone was saying, get out. And that became a catchphrase for going rural. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? It's get out, get out, get out. Well, then later in the year, they're all cheerleading Daniel Penny, who strangles Jordan Neely on the subway. And so we saw this narrative unfold. And we found that the movie Get Out seemed to predict in many ways a lot of the elements of the subway choking. But Get Out was the catchphrase for this event that was culminating with Daniel Penny. And in the movie Get Out, directed by Jordan Peele, there's a character that looks like Daniel Penny. And he's also a lacrosse player with a penchant for choking people. And so in the movie, he's actually choking a black man, which is what happened in the subway with the real Daniel Penny. And Daniel Penny's the top earning Give, Send, Go account on that crowdfunding website because he's been supported by people like Kid Rock and stuff. So you know it's a psyop. But you're right, though. They're using like all influencers to push future psyops, just like they use the regular news for, I mean, regular entertainment for predictive programming.
And the Get Out, that's like a narrative of moving people, right? So like whether psyops, all these, it's like, move in this direction. You can almost herd mass populations of people to, I don't know, places that they dictate, and it'd be by consent. It doesn't even need to be by force if you get everyone to believe a certain way.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that they're going to use public relations and perception management to get people to agree to whatever future they have for us. That nobody's going to be forced. Like I think they're going to get the masses to acquiesce to censorship. They're going to say because of Elon Musk and Disease X, the mind virus unleashed on that website, we have to curtail the free flow of information. Essentially, masking your minds, vaxing your brains. Like they're gonna get everyone to agree to it so nobody fights it. And I think they're looking for unanimous agreement on this. But there's a buildup, and yeah, that's
For
like
sure, yeah. And
they get us to agree. They don't have to fight.
I did want to clarify one thing in the chat. Someone was saying Semitism as much as a mind virus is anti-Semitic. I agree 100%. And another example of predictive programming is when Kanye West was on InfoWars with Nick Fuentes. He was ranting, this anti-Semitic rant. He even said Adolf Hitler, he's a cool guy, like I like him, while holding a Bible and looking crazy, had a black mask on and was acting crazy. So subconsciously in the masses, people think any criticism of Israel from a biblical perspective, you have to be insane. You have to be as ridiculous as Nick Fuentes or Kanye West. So yeah, and the chat member said Semitism. Oh yeah, mainstream evangelical Christianity is 100% pro. We must support it. Whereas if you're a true Bible-believing Christian, you see the truth that Israel is not even a physical location. This is a psyop, a bifurcated psyop. You're either 100% pro-Israel or you're the next Adolf Hitler. Neither position is biblical or true.
Isn't it interesting how they brought out Ye with the black mask on to spew these kind of things that you couldn't have said, like Alex Jones couldn't say these things, and then he's hanging out with Candace Owen and he does the White Lives Matter thing, the fashion show, and she too, she's like the Daily Wire puts her in front so she can say things that if said by anyone else it would be considered racist and sexist. And it's kind of strange because if you look at Ye before that, he actually had a song out called Black Skinhead. And I saw that and I read into it as maybe predictive programming for his future role as this instigator. Like I don't think he's a loose cannon. I think all these individuals are on some level highly scripted, and I think they're meant to be discredited. Like Nick Fuentes, unfortunately, has just kind of devolved into I don't know what it is right now because his whole life is hitched to the Trump wagon and it's not going his way. So he's publicly denouncing Trump, and I don't know if he has life after MAGA. He's got this twisted, repulsive ideology that he's built his life around. But yeah, I think he's non-credible is my point. He's like in favor of Agenda 2025, which would deport half his family. So he can't really be behind it. And none of these individuals seem realistic. It's like Trump and Vance build the wall, anti-immigrant, but at the same time they're married to immigrants. So yeah, it's definitely not credible. None of these.
And it plays. I was going to say it plays into the controlled demolition of the fringe, right? They're Pied Pipers, absolutely. They're self-contradicting points. They're actor stages for predictive programming. I didn't even think about that one Kanye West song. Wow, that's wild. So it really is all planned out in advance.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of these actors are basically doing like reality TV show bits, you could say. Like my whole my whole approach to this thing is examining what fake news really means. And we're not saying every single news story, but the big transformative perception management events. And they're not just shootings or terror attacks, they're celebrity based psyops. And all these things, though, fake as they are, enter the history books. So long term, fake news becomes our fake history. So history is being faked as they go. They're making history. And I think what we have here is it's very comprehensive where they have to have the world stage flooded with their own people. And I watched Joker 2. The tagline was "The world's a stage," and I'm getting that that's really a lot of the messaging in a lot of these recent movies is just about how much is under the control of the worldview monopolists, and it's like everything practically.
Well, the weird thing is, I think there's going to be a false awakening. You keep hearing that a lot. There's a great awakening is a big QAnon or right wing talking point. I think it's going to be a false awakening where there might even be like a controlled demolition of so there's a controlled demolition of the far right. You've identified that in previous episodes. There might even be a coming controlled demolition of the far left as well. That's synthesis, if you will, and people are going to expose Hollyweird. Look, they've all been exposed. Well, and it's going to be a controlled demolition so that the handlers that are handling both sides still remain in control, while people are duped into thinking they have now ascended past that.
It could happen with this Diddy thing, and I've been really skeptical about it because, of course, it's a mainstream push thing, the timing of it, and then I see this Gods and Monsters, no, Monsters Ball. Is that what's on Monsters Ball, where Diddy is in jail for something. I think he's on death row, and so it looks predictive programming ish. But if there's any reality to it, it seems like that could be something that they could use to fake or real, take down a lot of the people who are tied to the left. And you'll notice, Diddy has a lot of the people around him are directly connected to, a lot of people. I think that might fit that. I don't know. I'm not sure. What do you think about it?
Yeah, yeah. And your chat has mentioned other examples of predictive programming. I think there was an Austin Powers clip where they've been constantly making jokes for years. Nothing's like a P Diddy party, right? And in last night's one of my own streams, I was playing a video game. I realized I was like, "You're Kesha." She had this song called TikTok. The very first words of that song are "waking up in the morning like P Diddy," as she's like, coming from a totally outrageous party, hungover. So it's been in the mass consciousness that P Diddy has these crazy parties. And in your chat, someone else had even posted an interview with P Diddy where he said, "Yeah, my ending's going to be crazy." So it's like it's always been there, right? And
Right.
that's compelling evidence that this is all fake. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. If they can take down a couple of buildings, controlled demo, and then project a movie scenario onto it, if they can be that brazen on that scale, then how hard is it to have a celebrity drama that builds up over a few decades? I mean, this is like very easy from a script writing perspective to act out, and nobody has to know. And he goes to the same jail with Sam Bank Friedman, Frank James, the Prophet of Doom, R. Kelly, and I'm like, okay, it just seems like this could be likely staged and fake, and it has everybody's attention.
And I think people need to understand that when it's staged, it's also very uh, functional and useful. They can milk as many narratives out of it as possible when it's controlled top to bottom. So, like, it's, I don't know, very entertaining to think that these are organic exposés. Oh, it's very organic, it's happening. But in reality, it wouldn't be very useful if it was organic, because there's too much chaos and randomness in organic, exposés and salacious stories. It makes way more sense to have a salacious story that fits into a metascript that's working, that's being reinforced in films, music, etc.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. This is one of these areas though where I'm waiting for evidence. I mean, what do you think about the Epstein thing? Do you remember all the hype? It's going to bring down the deep state. We have evidence that the Clintons eat babies, and all these things were going to come out. Hunter Biden's laptop, it was going to expose all this stuff. This is not a new trick. They dangle this carrot and nothing comes of it. There's always this. It's going to be this big awakening, and I think this is going to end with nothing. I think it's going to be some kind of a disappointment, but I don't know. I haven't seen
It
anything
only,
otherwise.
I would say the trick only works again because people's memory or attention span is so short. But regarding Epstein, there was another bifurcated side, right? There was either the mainstream official talking point, he killed himself, and then the other thing is he didn't kill himself, right? Like obviously he was a deep state assassin. what people don't understand, the third position is that he's still alive, or he's not even a real person. Like, he could just be a character on the world stage. That position is totally drowned out by the official narrative and the deep state narrative, right? So it's like that's my take on the whole situation. And again, it was a big nothing burger. Didn't really amount to anything. He just died, right? So
That third position, I call it the unacknowledged. So it's important to note that even though they're banned and censored, the alt media types like Alex Jones, he's banned, he's censored, but however, he's like a main key player at January 6th. So in other words, he's acknowledged. He's a part of the world view. And so you have the acknowledged mainstream, acknowledged alternative. Outside of those views are the unacknowledged perspectives that involve skepticism and did it even happen type stuff. And yeah, there's no platforming that. They don't even consider it. And that's why we're making it a point to create a platform for this third perspective, because everything else is contained in the box that doesn't really entertain all the possibilities. Like, I didn't believe the Epstein death because I don't think an ambulance driver is going to photograph a patient on a gurney on the way. I mean, that to me is just like a major privacy violation. No one got fired. No one took credit for it. No one questioned it. And it looked like a dummy.
and it was distributed through like Twitter and like social media, and people are on anonymous image boards as well. We're like, look at this, whoa, and so and they are unwitting propaganda mules. They think they're getting the scoop, but they're actually just spreading what is one of the two official positions. And yeah, people really need to comprehend that. These streamers, even people that you don't think. But anyway, I don't want to take up the rest
Well,
of your show.
okay, well that's a great point. But go ahead, go ahead.
Thanks for doing this. Parallel media, absolutely. We need more people questioning the unheard or like not even discussed position. Like, is this fake? That's not, you don't find that anywhere else. So thanks.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate the call. Yeah, the unacknowledged, and the unacknowledged exists, and it's just that it's outside of their purview. And flat Earth is acknowledged. That's why you couldn't. That's why you couldn't go anywhere with it. That's why it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, I'm waiting to see about this 24-hour sun thing. Jim Firebrand says it's working. Everyone on my Facebook has bought into the Storm and P Diddy narrative. Even my mom and okay, and they're all resharing conspiracy, truth, or trash. And a lot of it is like recycled QAnon stuff without the Q. Nicotrama says, "Damn great caller." Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I have a link to the caller. It's Leo Pirate. I have a link to a video that he was going to have me play. So let's take a look at that, and I will post a link to it so you can watch it after. Okay, here we go. And the title of tonight's live stream is Weather Warfare Psyop. Haarp Chemtrails are fake. Just throwing some keywords out there because a lot of people are talking about weather warfare, which is a hoax just as much as climate change is a hoax. But the people who don't buy into the climate change hoax buy into the weather warfare hoax. They think cloud seeding causes hurricanes. And one more point about this, because we're talking about interpretations. The mainstream interpretation is going to lean towards, of course, the climate change. And the alternative is going to say something else. And so this is the MSM view. And then the alternative is MSM plus. Like, we agree there's a storm, but we think it was caused by secret technology. So they add on to what's already there. The position we take here is MSM minus, which is let's subtract what we can't verify. Let's not believe without some kind of facts first. Because there was one guy who went to Chimney Rock to verify that it smelled like corpses and there were 1,000 bodies and arms sticking out of, homes and stuff, and just these horror scenes that were described. And none of that was true. And there's enough real horror in the world without having to add on to it with drama. And it's also interesting to note here that crisis actors are not just on the left. They're on both sides. And a lot of them just look like TikTokers who are paid to push some narratives. And sometimes they do it just for clicks. They're not even real crisis actors, but they just see that, hey, there's a they put clicks over truth. Infinite Plane Radio.
Yes, hello. This is James from the Midwest.
Oh, hey, what's up? What's on your mind? Thank you for calling.
No, I've just been watching your streams for a while now. Haven't put anything into the chat. Just been watching for a while, and just noticed some synchronicities, as you would say, sarcasm. But the latest episode of Tinfoil Hat, I just was listening to it today. The guest was Old Demigod or Demigard. Old Demigard.
Yes, Old Demigod. I'm familiar with him. Very good researcher.
Yeah, and he's talking about, like, I'm the only one. Basically, I was listening to his thing, and he's like, he's taking all of your material. So I don't know if you know who he is, or if you know anything about him.
I've seen some of his videos. I think he put together a pretty nice compilation of single shoes at various psyops. I'm familiar with Sam Tripoli. He's a comedian, but I haven't really listened to Ole Demigard in a long time. I'd like to take a listen, see where he's at. I'm interested in people who see through this thing.
Oh yeah, no, I listen to Sam Tripoli. It's like one of my regular podcasts I listen to as part of, like, kind of like he's like you say, he's kind of like one of the comedian people that allow, like, what's an acceptable realm of things is way I see it. And so I just thought, and then I also noticed another thing, that once you started doing your events, your once a monthly event that you said, that's when Hillary Clinton said something about guardrails.
Yeah, they took that from us, and yeah, they definitely took the guardrail term and they threw it into AI, and because they know they use guardrails, and we've identified them.
Mm-hmm.
But
And that's all I'm going to bring up on this call, and I'm going to let you get back to it.
Cool. Well, thank you for the call, and if you want to send me a link to that Sam Tripoli episode, I'll take a listen, and I'll listen in on.
Well, it's just his latest episode, just his latest one that just came out.
Okay, I'll subscribe now on my podcast thing. Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right. Looks like Ted Stryker has arrived with a box full of blue wrenches. This is where it's at. Ardman, Jake, Corvus, Friendly Ghost, All the World's a Stage, Just Give Me 5 Minutes Please, ABC Def, Mimsy, Schwimsy, It's Snoopy have all received blue wrenches. Lean Dion says, Ola Demigard is a false flag MSM strong though. Okay, well, here's the thing. If he says people die at these events, if he's a corpse clutcher, if he's a death clinger, if he's running around with theatrical blood on his hands saying people died and it was a false flag, then he's on the wrong side of the screen. But I have to listen and see. That's the line. And if you can't cross that line, you're not a skeptic. You see, the MSM plus, or the alternative, these are non-skeptical positions because they do accept at face value the framing of everything. And unfortunately, a lot of people are married to their models. Once they've accepted a model and they can't get past it, oh, it's real or false flag, real or false flag. It's like, no, it's a lot more nuanced than that. And false flag was a hoax from the beginning. Joined by P. Trippa. Yeah, and one more thing too. There have never been any false flags. You can't find me one. And as long as we're using that term, we're going to be using misleading concepts. We're going to be implying things that aren't true. And we're past that. And that's why we're doing Auto Hoax Con. We need to find out who's on the right side of the screen, who's close, who can be perhaps persuaded. Because we are right. That is a fact. It's not a brag. It's just the fact is that we have come to an understanding of what predictive programming really is, how aligned it is with what happens in the news, and the purpose of faking news long term, which again is controlling history, controlling time. And the idea that people died is a guardrail to keep you from finding out the truth. There are people who say this Trump thing looks so fake. He would totally fake it for votes. But the fireman died. So if you say it's a hoax, well, now you're saying this guy is a liar or his family's a liar. And Trump's so funny. He's like, shout out to the dead fireman. He had the best seats in the House. It's like, it's a good line, but maybe it doesn't strike him as odd because he knows it's a hoax. But as long as there's blood there, it prevents people from thinking about how fake it might really be. They can't go that far. Dirk Zink says, "Do you mind if I share this on my Facebook? I have 2,500 friends. I deleted 500 who don't get it." Yeah, by all means. And don't feel bad about deleting people who don't get it. Because as we move on, as we move forward, the people who don't get it might become a little more vocal. And I had someone on Twitter today say, "What am I supposed to do with this information? These are some interesting connections, but what do I do with it?" And at this point, I'm kind of like thinking, if you haven't figured it out by this time, then you're just going to be a late adopter, and that's fine. We're really interested in the people who've already figured out things to a certain extent. The deprogramming has to happen at the level of the individual deciding to be the arbiter over what they believe, rejecting the authority implied by the screen. And there are enough people in the know that we don't need to try to recruit people and convert. This is not my intention. And I think it makes sense too to emphasize quality over quantity, because the quality of it, the high standard of evidence, and the numbers of us, it's going to create the schism, which has to happen. Dirk Zink says the fireman never died. I saw it all psyops. Yeah, and it was kind of interesting how 84 days after the event at 6:11, at that time, they have the bell ring, moment of silence, and someone sings Ave Maria, which is the song the Riddler sang in his cell. And if you remember, in the movie, the Riddler, his name is Enigma, like Enigma, but the young Riddler looks just like the shooter Thomas Crooks, and the media has described him as enigmatic, as an enigma. So Thomas Crooks looks like the Riddler. He's been compared to or called an enigma, the Riddler's name, and then the song that they sing in the moment of silence is the Riddler's song when he's locked up in the cell. Just another link. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, I heard Marfugel talking about Leave the World Behind. He talked about the painting over the headboard changing throughout to reveal a flood. Yes. Leave the World Behind, mandatory watching. Lots of predictive programming. Predictive programming is not a conspiracy theory. Anybody who says it doesn't exist is saying so out of just really ignorance at this point. That's reality denialism. It's like saying propaganda doesn't exist. Just because you don't perceive it or see it, register it as such, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But no, predictive programming exists, and these aren't anomalies that can be attributed to mere coincidence or possible mystical synchronicities. No, this is a deliberate alignment, long-term, between all mass entertainment, the popularized stuff, and future news events. Planted messages, post-hypnotic suggestions, narrative. We're talking about propaganda through repetition. It's a marketing tactic. But Leave the World Behind, the Obamas, it's called Higher Ground Productions. So even that has flood implied in it, Higher Ground Productions. Virtual Reality Witness says, Patricia Steer, your co-host of Strange World, Mark Sargent, promotes that we live in a virtual reality. Perhaps an interview with you, Mark, and Ronnie would be an option. Fascinating. You know, my take on simulation theory and virtual reality at this point might not go over well with simulation theorists, but I happen to believe that simulation theory is being thrown out there so that people who figure out that there's something not quite right with the world as presented on the screen will default to everything's fake instead of just saying the model that they're showing us is fake. And I'm not talking about the earth, I'm talking about the world view as model. Jim Firebrand says, I almost don't want to talk to people who aren't awake. 1, moon landing, real or fake, earth flat, yes or no. 3, 9/11 is terrorists. I gauge where people are based on their beliefs. Yeah, that's true. Well, most of the people I know are MSM, not MSM+. They're entertained by it and maybe talk about it, but they don't go there. Others, I assume a lot of others might even be leaning more woke, or they're just not engaged. Most people are asleep. They're blissful. And I do not try to disturb that sleep. And if I find out someone listens to me, like family or something, I'm like, you shouldn't listen to me. Patricia Steer says, and that touch of spelling on the fireman's name wrong on purpose to rile up truthers who saw the misspelling. Yeah, that was probably planted. And there's something else. Like the whole thing with the Secret Service agents acting like clowns, like Three Stooges, like it couldn't do their jobs. Like that was planted because the right had already been hyping up this idea of DEI hires. Like every time there was an issue with an airplane, oh, it must be a DEI hire. That was just this phrase they would throw out there, and they attached it to the Secret Service agents. And so I'm like, okay, this was obviously planted. And as long as people are talking about these things, they're not talking about whether it's real or not. But I think it's safe to say we live in a simulation. It's 100% safe to say that mentally we live in a construct, a map, an internal map of the world. The question is, does it align with reality? If it doesn't, you're crazy. That's kind of one of the standards. If it doesn't comport, then there's some kind of delusion at work, perhaps superstition or any number of things. If it doesn't comport, then there's generally an issue. But the entire world has been put into the same sim, so we are pretty much all on the same page. So nobody notices how crazy we are collectively. Now, I can't go through my Discord right now. That's a second computer and a whole other set of exercises. I can't exactly make that happen, Arminry. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Going through comments. But okay, so Elon Musk had talked about skepticism. I mean, I'm sorry, about simulation theory before. You know, he's joked about it. And I think he's someone who's in the know. I think he's someone who's in the know about what the simulation really is. Like, it's not a literal simulation. So simulation theorists are simulation literalists. They think it's literally a simulation. Nothing is real. And like, no, that's nihilism at this point. We don't know enough to conclude that. Okay, I managed to get in there. I'm multitasking here. Armin Ree, I sent you a little notice there. And thanks for adding the CRN theme track. So if you just got here, we have a new podcast, and you can be a part of it. Recorded twice per week in the Discord voice chat. It's called the IPS Deep Think Tank. The next one's going to be recorded in a couple of days, and I will send out live stream notifications with a link. And all you do is you sit in voice chat, and if you want to talk about something, you just talk about it, and we will bounce off one another. And today we had a nice 2+ hour conversation. We covered a lot of ground. Dirk says, did you watch Blink twice? It's purposeful mocking to show how people are so asleep they can do whatever they want. I haven't seen it, but it's notable that Channing Tatum is in it, because he was in Fly Me to the Moon, which is about, it's mocking the masses because they faked the moon landing to trick the Russians. And that whole movie was nothing but mockery. Virtual Reality Witness says, simulation is the old term we don't use anymore because it's taken to mean computer programs created by humans. We promote that we're in a supernatural virtual reality created by the creator. I see. Yeah, I think there's some value in using that kind of terminology to describe things. We don't have to rely on, traditional language as far as mystic and religious cosmographies. Like, I happen to like different models, like the tree of life concept is intriguing. And how it's described in these various books I have here, I think there's something to it. And I do think that there's indications that we're not soulless apes with big egos. I do think that we're plugged into something higher. Although I question if it's all of us. Like, I'm wondering if there's a certain percentage of people who don't have any connection to anything beyond, who are products of this realm, perhaps. I'm not saying they're synths or NPCs, but, I just wouldn't be shocked. Mango says, Leave the World Behind was actually a dumb-ass movie. Oh, it was insultingly bad. It was ham-fisted. But frame by frame, it contained predictive programming. And if you really look at it closely, I think you'll agree with me, it's about the Obamas in the White House. That's what the house symbolizes. That was a major aspect of it. But the author said that his book was prescient. And he said this about his book, which came out in time for the lockdowns 2020. Not about the movie, which is also prescient. I mean, both of them, predictive. They both contain foreshadowing for things they knew to come. And Francis Ford Coppola, Joker's, and he had his Duper's Delight, he admitted that Megalopolis is about to happen, which means Russia is going to drop something. Russia's going to 9/11 us. Perhaps, well, it's going to be in collusion, I think, with domestic violent extremists. But the movie's hinting at this in the form of the Russian satellite falling to Earth. Jim Firebrand says, my best friend worked at SpaceX and now works for a private satellite company. They had 7 failed launches. The company's made up of ex-SpaceX employees. My friend believes in space. See, I would like to start a space program, like a company, a private space company. And what we would do is we would just provide compelling simulations, and they wouldn't know the difference. You know, they charge like $40,000 to put CubeSats in space. And I think it's just a racket. You have to be part of the club. Rockets are obelisks. It's an old symbol of the cult that runs the world. Is it not their oldest symbol? The symbol of Osiris, a ball. I think that is what the rocket represents. And the capsule, it's all symbolism. It's the capstone. It's an Illuminati altar that you're watching, that flaming obelisk flying into the heavens. Jim Firebrand says, I haven't postulated to him that maybe you failed because you can't go to space. Yeah, I've been wondering about this. At some point, people are going to start asking questions if they're not able to convincingly send somebody somewhere. And I think one way they could dampen the enthusiasm is send a starship out there like the Titanic with all the most popular people, rich people, a lot of influencers. And then on the way to Mars, it gets hit by a space iceberg, like a comet, and everybody dies. Then no one's going to want to go to Mars. They'll wait. And it's not Musk's fault. They didn't plan that comet. Okay, Tim says, Tit Striker says, if you like the Tree of Life story, I'll post an amazing video on Discord. Yeah, I like the description of it as a model of consciousness as like an emanation descending into the material realm, and that it has this idea of like sort of like we're a contiguous being, that we exist on the terrestrial plane, but that we have a connection higher, more or less, but that there's some kind of amnesic wall, something that prevents you from accessing the higher perspective, but it is glimpsed at certain moments. And I happen to believe that synchronicity is a form of communication, not with like an external entity, but with one's own higher mind that isn't as tightly bound to the here, now, time-space matrix. I think there's some kind of perspective. But I think I liken it to echolocation. You know, bats in the dark, they're flying through the dark, and their screeching echoes back to them and lets them know how to navigate. And I kind of think that our will, our consciousness, our sentience is projected into the void, the chaos of pre-creation, and that within the realm of possibility, these various paths that are before us may send back some kind of signal, more or less, guidance, you could say. And I think synchronicity represents some kind of guidance in that sense. And I say this because I've had too many instances of intuitive glimpses or hints that have been validated by experience, and where I didn't know, I couldn't have known, I couldn't have been here at this right place and right time by any other means. So it suggests to me that this source of information is somehow, I don't know, outside of the 5 senses. It's getting some kind of info, but it can't communicate verbally. It communicates through various means. I think a lot of it is probably highly personal as far as how synchronicities arrive to you. But it's all about time and timing. Okay, Jim Firebrand says they laid off 200 people because they can't get a satellite in orbit. Well, I happen to think that low Earth orbit is likely a hoax. I mean, it's a hoax. But everything that they say is done in low Earth orbit can be done by stratospheric balloons. And so what's more likely? Loon X. Look into Loon X and tell me they didn't just rebrand it as Starlink. Dirk says, The best movie I've seen was Speak No Evil. It brags how people are so easily tricked by the controllers with simple lies. Look at Kamala Harris. Yeah, okay. Speak No Evil is the one that the villain is based on Andrew Tate. And the actor, the director didn't know Tate was going to get into the trouble he's in now. Nicotrama says, I don't have any sense of higher self or experience synchronicities. I'm probably just an NPC here. Possibly. Maybe it's latent. The thing is, I have and this is where it's like I can't pass this off as evidence or proof of anything, but I happen to think that the focused, concentrated will of the perceiver, the human moving through this place, does in some way have some influence on events, on future events. I think there's some kind of relationship here. And I'm not saying that belief creates reality. Billions of people believe in the moon landing, it's still fake. But I'm talking about causality, probability manipulation. I'm talking about finding information that is specific and nuanced, that is directly correlated to what you're thinking through some completely random phenomenon. And I have many examples of it. And so I don't have a perfect explanation, but I do think it is a mechanism. It is something that can be studied. And if it wasn't for the instances where it was completely vindicated and validated and reality tested, I would have dismissed it as just coincidence, as a lot of people will tend to do, which I understand. So I say, don't take my word for it. But it makes me think a lot about attention economy and the MSM focus on harnessing everybody's attention at all times. Like, what is this thing we think of as attention? Like, what is your focus? Is it merely a process of organizing your thoughts so you can survive, physically, or is there something else? And I think that there's some kind of cybernetic relationship between the perceiver and the perceived. Now, of course, the modern dominant paradigm will say that's crazy. You're just an over-evolved ape with a massive ego, and you're just trying to cope with the fact that you're mortal and the universe is going to die too, and nothing has any meaning. And I would argue that no, I think the universe is made of meaning, that everything is intrinsically meaningful, and that our perception of meaning is kind of like the universe doesn't exist until we experience it. I think we perceive experience simultaneously. I can't prove it. I'm not a physicist. I'm just saying, I think that my model of the universe is a little more open to the idea of our influence in it, that we're not objects on objects. So like, I'm not even an earther. You can't call me a flat earther. You can't call me a glurf. I'm not even technically an earther. Like, I don't even know. And if you know, good for you, or if you think you do. Okay, Eccentric View says, JLB thinks the pyramids are about 300 years old. What are your thoughts? I think that's about right. I think that they use a lot of backdating, like dinosaurs, for example. How do you discover a dinosaur? It's like you find a bone, and then you build a science fiction model off of it. You order a plaster replica from China, and then it exists. And then you say, oh, this is this old. I find it very questionable. Dirk says, even on here, I noticed few people still seem to want to believe they're slave masters, that some people lie about... yeah. People who still want to believe in space are having to accept that they're getting the source, their information is coming from the same people who lie about everything on the ground. Like, it's not enough to call out the psyops on Earth. If you can't call out the psyops on Earth and in space at the same time, then you're 1 foot in the matrix. Look how they're merging these things. We're in the age of space wars. The Space Force nonsense. And by the way, Space Force was predicted in the 1958 episode Trackdown, where Trump comes into town, sells them on a wall to protect them from the cosmic threat. Yeah, that was a reference to Space Force. And then Trump gets arrested. Okay, continuing. LG Rhythm says, theory of evolution, Darwinism is a big lie. Jim Firebrand says, he talks about the Ben Ben Stone and the Templars. I mentioned the Ben Ben Stone yesterday because Priscilla Presley's son, Ben, had died, and they kept him in Graceland. They kept him in the house for 2 months in a room at 55 degrees. And I looked up the Ben stone and thought, this is really interesting, very occultic. Keeping a body at your house for like months in the summer. That sounds like Egyptian Sun King funerary rites. So I don't know what's going on over there, but they call him Ben. And I thought that's very curious. Okay, continuing. Got a video to play here. Leo Pirate had posted this. This is from Weather Zionism. I'm just going to play a few seconds here, about 30 seconds, and then I'll share the link.
Another necessary watching. This is another, we got to watch this clip, okay? Because this will blow your freaking mind, okay? This guy, this is only a minute long, and this guy's not Mormon, by the way. This guy's not Mormon. He's not Mormon. This is like I forgot what channel I saved this video clip from, but this guy, you'll see. He basically suggests that those who are against Israel are the ones who are causing the calamities, the natural disasters, like hurricanes, or maybe the Maui wildfires, or whatever. He's got Lego hair. Anyway, I'll play the clip.
He does have Lego hair. That is awesome. That is Lego hair.
Let it speak for itself, okay?
And where are they firing the rockets from? Gaza. In 2005, under the Bush administration, we forced Israel out of the Gaza Strip. 5 days later, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast. And this book called Eye to Eye by my friend Bill Koenig, he documents 124 instances when there had been historic natural disasters when America was trying to force Israel to give up land. And the most recent was Hurricane Ian. When Hurricane Ian hit Florida, President Biden was giving a speech at the United Nations trying to force Israel into a two-state solution.
So does everyone see that?
Yeah, okay, I see what he's doing here. And that's this conflating of causation and correlation. It's like, okay, the timing, right, interesting story. Yeah, people will politicize the weather. And it's in fashion. You just blame your enemies for the bad weather. And they go with it. Okay, what do we have here? Oh, this is nice. So someone asked me if I'm going to vote for Harris. And I'm doing so as a protest, of course, against the truthers and the anti-position, which reflexively supports the right wing. So I was going to vote for Harris in order to cancel out the vote of somebody on the other side. And I'm still planning on it. I'm actually embarrassed, but I'm going to do it. And I'll show you evidence of it. But anyway, if we don't do it, listen to this. This is a professor at the University of Kansas. And he literally said that men who don't vote for Kamala should be lined up and shot. And then he says, please cut this from the recording.
Guys are smarter than girls. You got some serious problems. That's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works. Did I say that? Scratch that from the recording. I don't want the deans hearing that I said that.
That's horrible. Doesn't want the deans hearing that he said that. Okay, that's rather insane. All right, again, we're talking about this weather warfare, psyops, HAARP, chemtrails, all fake stuff. Everybody's exaggerating the weather for their own gain, both sides. And I'm saying, yeah, it's real. I'm not saying it's CGI, but the version of it we're shown that's supposedly from outer space is surely fake. And it's got a problem here. Look at this pixel. Like, is somebody here, if they can verify, look up and see if there's a big square patch in the sky? Like, there's a big storm up ahead, and look for the square patch. And it's from 1 minute and 31 seconds, where you can see the pixel. And this is from Hurricane Milton, as seen from the ISS. Interestingly, a lot of people are saying it looks fake. Like, this is not a flat Earth thread. This is just some regular NASA fan. And a lot of people are saying, I love CGI. How come there's no land? This is embarrassing. Why is a hurricane motionless? They say they're moving fast, but Yeah, that's...
New Ko-fi shop sale from Vincent.
Thank you, Vincent. Appreciate that. Supporting the IPS shop. I am selling some watercolors. In fact, if you've ordered a watercolor commission, I'll be sending you an email tonight. Dirk says, Tim, you and I see eye to eye about everything, unlike my even semi-awake friends in Canada. Yeah, I don't even sweat it because we have a plan here. The reason why people are so mixed up is there haven't been any good options. Where it's safe to be mainstream, the fringes are, like left and right, are cringy. Proud Boy, cringy. Wokesters, cringy. It's awful. It's shrill, and it's full of grifters. Who would want to be a part of that? And they're misanthropic, hateful victims. It's the worst worldviews to have. So most people will just stay comfortable in the middle, in the blue pill dream, and they have no incentive to wake up. But I think the reason why they don't want to get up is because they don't want to be like those people. They don't want to be angry. They don't want to be activists. They don't want to be engaged in the mind war at that level. So the alternative is parallel media. The alt and mainstream are part of the same box, so we create this third branch of media. And once we have this established, and these auto hoax conventions are going to help it expand, once we have enough people in it, then I think a lot of the sensible people who've been caught up in the traps will join us. And I think it'll open up some paths. But it's a big leap for someone to go from true believer in media to being told, no, this is a completely simulated worldview. And they filled it up with hyperstitions and superstitions and hoaxes and God constructs. 777 says, grifter is the word that people call each other they don't agree with, right? I would say grifters are people who are making, like their whole purpose is making money, not about elucidating some truth. For example, the people who are sharing TikTokers' accounts of what they saw in North Carolina, a lot of these individuals are saying it's weather weapons. Look what this person said. And they're hyping up something for clicks, for money. They're not really trying to investigate in any meaningful way. And in the griftosphere, the term grifter makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons because it kind of suggests that this is kind of like crisis actors. It's low life activity when it comes to, it's kind of like carnies in a way. It's a scamming thing. Ted Stryker says, why do they all pant when talking about the latest thing? Well, I've been examining a lot of these monologues from witnesses of these events, and a lot of them do the basic method acting approaches, look at WikiHow, how to cry, and a lot of them will hyperventilate. All right, moving on. Talk about the pixel. Okay, what do we have here? Just another random and pointless insertion of 33 into a conversation.
From about 3 million cubic yards of debris to 10 million cubic yards of debris could occur during Hurricane Milton. To put that into Disney terms, that is 33 spaceship Earths at Epcot Center.
Now, what does that mean? To put that into Disney terms, 33 spaceships at Epcot Center. What kind of word salad was that? Let's just, again, this is the director, Ellen Harris, Seminole County.
That is 33 spaceship Earths at Epcot Center. All right, that's a lot of debris to pick up. 33 spaceship Earths. It is going to take us a long, long time to pick up debris. So the
Strange. Seems forced. That's kind of how I felt about that movie Megalopolis. Like they had to force a lot of stuff into it just to align with their predictive programming agenda. And there are times where it seems like the programming is far more important than the quality of the story. Okay, so here's another suggestion that what we're looking at with the Diddy thing might be fake. So there's this Piers Morgan interview with one of these Diddy witnesses, and she said a lot of things about Jay-Z and Beyonce. She said they're worse than Diddy. They do satanic rituals. They leave children stuffed in suitcases on the side of the road. And Piers Morgan listened to all this stuff and blasted it. Well, then Jay-Z's attorneys hit him up with a cease and desist, and he came out and he apologized.
Well, Jack, you were right, unexpectedly made several serious allegations about Jay-Z and Beyonce during that interview. As I said in the moment, they were not present to respond or defend themselves, but now they have. Their lawyers contacted us to say that those claims were totally false and have no basis in fact, and we've therefore complied with a legal request to cut them from the original interview. Editing interviews is not something we do lightly at a show called Uncensored. But, like the proverbial cries of fire in a crowded theatre, there are legal limits on us too.
So his show Uncensored had to censor itself because of Jaguar Wright. And she says,
cases for decades. For decades.
How many victims?
What's the difference between me and Judy Garland? Social media.
She sounds a little unhinged, but she goes into detail about the evils of Jay-Z and Beyonce, and this was later cut out of the interview.
They do nasty things.
What do you think happened with Kim?
Keeping people against their will. Putting people on planes while they're unconscious, just like Aaliyah got on that plane. Unconscious. There's a lot of things that people don't want to talk about.
All right, and Elephant Tusk says, I don't think it's fake. I think it's New World Order 2 taking down New World Order 1. Yeah, see, that's plausible. It's somewhat plausible. The thing is, it could still be fake, and they could use it to do this takedown scenario. Like, I don't think that it's necessarily true that P. Diddy did all these things, but he's going to take the fall for it. Kind of like OJ or any of these characters. They're not really criminals. They didn't really do this stuff. It's just theater at this point. Epstein, likely theater. And also, they couldn't repackage and resell QAnon this election term. And so a lot of the same stories have emerged with different fronts. Like, I noticed a return of satanic ritual abuse. A lot of people talking about that. They're not talking about adrenochrome. They're not talking about deep state, but they're talking about children being transported in big crates and satanic ritual abuse. And these people write these horrible stories. I came across one who described how Bernie Sanders and some others were there in a basement. And she describes these horrible things that happened. And I'm like, okay, you're lying about this in all likelihood. And I did research it, and it couldn't have been possible. But I'm like, what does it make you? If you're fabricating this type of evidence, it means that you're actually kind of, I don't know, the problem. And it is kind of like illegal content in a sense. It's like, who would make this horrifying abuse fiction and then try to use it to build clout? And I called some of these people out, and then I was accused of being a satanic ritual abuser trying to cover up crimes. So they're bringing back the old satanic panic. Pizzagate was a new satanic panic. Good call there. 777 says, speaking of WWE, she sounds like it too. The way she's pausing for dramatic effect. Oh yeah, this is definitely, to me, this is definitely a performance. She's rehearsed. It sounds dramatic. But it's been deleted. But the damage is done. Okay, we've been talking about a fake weather warfare, a bifurcated psyop, and by that I mean, of course, both sides fundamentally agree. By the way, here's a friend of Epstein, Donald Trump, talking about how he's also friends with Diddy.
Diddy for 6 years to be perfect.
Working for Diddy.
Absolutely.
I love Diddy. You know, he's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy.
He expects.
Is he a good guy?
I don't want to answer that
Oh,
question.
well, I think he's a good guy. I'm going to stick up for him.
So there he is, sticking up for Diddy. And, of course, the nonners always overlooked Trump's association with Epstein. And there's some weird stuff with Epstein, no doubt about it. One of the strangest things about it is his connection with Donald Barr, the father of A.G. Barr. and the author of that bizarre science fiction book about kidnapped teenagers taken to these like island planets, more or less. Very bizarre story. But Epstein working with this guy, and then there's this STD called an Epstein-Barr virus, and the Epstein-Barr virus has a symptom of where people have these strange distortions in their sense of time and space. So there's some Alice in Wonderland, like I think they call it the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, is what they actually call it. So here is Francis Ford Coppola doing the Andrew Tate / Donald Trump hand triangle sign in front of his sign for Megalopolis, a fable. This movie, by the way, Megalopolis, is a reference to MAGA. There's Megalon, Magalon, Make Rome Great Again. It's definitely tied in there. And this is the article where he's hanging out with Robert De Niro, and he talks about how his movie is prescient and that it's going to come true. He says, and he was joined by Spike Lee and Robert De Niro. Spike Lee, major metascriptor. Robert De Niro, as we've described him, frequently has portrayed Donald Trump in these predictive programming roles. But they were at a screening of Megalopolis, and he said, quote, "It was prescient to do a movie about America as Rome because it's going to be happening in a few months." And everybody laughed. But being joined by De Niro, big deal. Being joined by Spike Lee, pretty big deal. And the interview itself contained this bit of duper's delight. John Voight was in it, and he's recently made headlines. He gave some talk about voting for Trump, and he had an American flag behind his head. And he provides the visual counterpart to Trump, a visual component. They even build a gold statue to him. Roxy says, just being a pet is enough to dispatch Diddy. Yeah, I'm really serious. I'm curious about it. Like, where is the real end and the fake begin? Does he deserve to be put through a wood chipper, or is he playing a role? And then I see all this horrible fan fiction coming from the QAnon, the Q-verse, where they're saying stuff about, Justin Bieber and just kind of making it up as they go. Dirk says, I have a question, Tim. Do you think they'll try to kill the electricity grid? Should I put in a solar system with a Tesla battery to back it up? My advice on that is no. They're not going to shut off Netflix. They're not going to shut off the programming. I think what they're going to do, instead of forcefully shutting us down, they're going to create the acquiescence, the complicity in censorship. They're going to say it's a matter of necessity, national security, and personal safety that we put up these guardrails because disease X. And the disease X, it's what I've been calling X since it became X. Disease X is the mind virus that Musk has been propping up, this idea of mind viruses. Mind virus is an idea that you catch from an influencer. Influencer, mind flu. They want it to, this is the thought crime. They created the thought crime. They have isolated the mind virus. It exists. Now it's only a hyperstition, but it exists. The public has accepted its existence. And they locked down the world in 2020 over something that you couldn't reality test in any significant way. This is the same thing. And every time they have one of these shooters, they say, oh, this person was radicalized on Reddit. This person got it from Discord. This person from Telegram. And when the big one happens, when the next 9/11 happens, they're going to say, hey, these domestic violent extremists were radicalized on X, on Telegram, which they call Terrorgram, on Discord. And they've already arrested the CEO of Telegram. They've opened it up. No more anonymity. So you can see the narrative building. But it all connects, this disease X all connects to the rage virus, which was alluded to in Jordan Peele's Nope with the ragey chimp, in Monkey Man, which came out on 3/11, a virus reference. We have Planet of the Apes. We have the WHO monkeypox declared as bad. Monkey comes out. We have 28 Days Later, the writer of which directed Civil War, where a rage virus is tearing the nation apart. So we have been set up for some time for the advent of the mind virus that necessitates the voluntary shutdown of things. And I think this is going to happen without the need for actually hitting infrastructure. Although, if they do simulate a nuke, they're obviously going to shut things down in some part of the country, likely the Pacific Northwest. Also, today's the 9th. On the 13th, there's some event called Flood PNW. I saw these flyers. They're posted around Seattle, floodpnw.com, the Pacific Northwest. And it looks like the flyers from Leave the World Behind, which also has the section about the flood. And it looks to be like the Death to America flyers. So that's coming up. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, the video with Coppola and De Niro, I'm going to watch the whole thing. Yeah, look, I really don't think they're going to break anything. They're going to they need us plugged in. They need us entranced. And I think there's an anagram worth looking at. So you have Leave the World Behind. It is a perfect anagram for Behold the End War Live. And the movie ends where Rose, who's called derisively Donnie Darko, she goes into the bunker and she's watching the last episode of Friends called How It Ends. So the last, I think it's called the last episode. I got to find the name of the last episode. How It Ends is a movie where Seattle gets it. But the Friends, so she's watching it on TV, and then it's called The Last One. And then that's when the world ends. That's when the nukes hit, and she's in the bunker. So my thinking is that Behold the End War Live anagram refers to that when everything's happening, we're going to be watching it on TV. This was also the message in Civil War. In Civil War, Trump's in the White House, and they're going to take him out. At the end, Kamala kills him. Spoiler alert. Kamala kills Trump in Civil War. Spoiler alert here. Sort of like Betty Pearson in Fallout represents Kamala. There's the coup, and there's the Trump figurine with a blood spot on the right side of the head. Like, this is a script that is being portrayed in front of us. But in the movie Civil War, if you weren't watching the news, you didn't even know there was a war going on. Nobody cared. It was like 2020 to me was like this, where I'm watching the riots, the live streams, I'm looking at Chazistan, and then friends and family are blissfully unaware. They don't know. If they're not plugged in, if they weren't plugged in, they didn't notice the 2020 summer of love, as Nancy Pelosi called it. They didn't notice police precincts burning. They didn't see people getting their heads kicked, dragged out of cars. They didn't see the freeways being shut down by angry mobs. People weren't watching. Or they were fed some line about a peaceful protest. Their perspective on it was manufactured for them. If you weren't doing any kind of outside research, if you weren't looking on your own, you might have missed it. So they could probably fake a civil war the same way. But don't listen to me. I mean, maybe they're going to shut everything down and you're not buying storable food items. You're subscribing to Netflix because of me. And then what's going to happen? But I also believe that the system here is based on pageantry, that superstition maintains the cohesion of the Roman state, as Polybius wrote. So it's the threat of the thing is more terrifying than the thing. And once in a while, like generationally, they need to do a big one. So you got the atom bomb, you got Pearl Harbor, you got your 9/11, you got your COVID. Every once in a while, you need something big to shake the masses, and then you can threaten them with it for another 20 years. So I think we're due for another big one. 2020 was big, it accomplished a lot, but it wasn't the big spectacle that we're awaiting. Eddie F says, it's a game and we don't know what the game is about. Yeah, I agree. I agree it's a game. I use the acronym Government, Academia, Media, Entertainment, the game program. It's an alternate reality game. The movie War Games with Ferris Bueller has a tagline, strange game, the only winning move is not to play. And I'm not playing. I'm anti-pro, anti-anti. I'm not taking positions because any position is a losing position. Dirk says, I'm 100 miles from Seattle by car. Garrow from Jurassic Liars tells me to get out. So far, I'm staying. Yeah, he and I have different opinions on what's going to go down. Although, his take on it is that this is going to be like the psyop of the century, and that there may be some kind of destruction having to do with the fault line, that there will be some significant world-changing event. And so this might be the one psyop where you don't want to be in the path. Might be. Personally, I don't think so. I think you're safe, but again, I could be wrong, although I don't think so. Like, where have we been wrong so far? Okay, moving on. Yeah, the predictive programming is relentless. But as long as you recognize that they're not going to change the rules. Like, suddenly they're not going to be like, hey, we're going to land on the moon for real this time. Like, they're not suddenly going to switch from simulation to doing things for real. That's not going to happen. It's not going to go kinetic. Okay, phones are still open if anyone has any further comments or anything else. By the way, subscribe to the newsletter if you want to participate. Within the next probably 2 days, we're going to do a follow-up after I premiere episode 1. We're going to do a follow-up to the IPS Deep Think Tank, which is a group chat in Discord, open topics. So we can be cover a little more ground than with calls, although we do get great callers here. So here's Donald Trump. This is interesting here. He's at the memorial service with a rabbi, and he asks if the rabbi wants his autograph on the prayer book.
Yeah, can I take that? Would you like me to sign this?
Would you like me to sign this? I mean, he signed Bibles. I think he sells a Bible, and I think it has a Constitution in it. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, but he's got this orange juice in front of him. And I'm thinking that's interesting because we were talking about how Tony Soprano in season 1, episode 12, survives an assassination attempt and it clips his ear, and he's got a bandage on his ear like Trump. The bullet went through the orange juice, the glass of orange juice in his hand. This is a tie-in to The Godfather. Francis Ford Coppola tied into this thing. The Godfather, where an assassination attempt is followed by oranges from a cart rolling down the road. Or then later, he's got the orange in his mouth when poisoned. So the orange is associated with the assassination of the Godfather figure. Now you have Trump, orange face paint that sometimes rubs off on Laura Loomer's cheek. So he's got the orange connection already kind of there. So we were talking about this, and then Megalopolis, Coppola, the main character Caesar does get the eye wound, and he recovers a few days later. So there's a lot of overlapping here. So the orange connection, though, is what someone has pointed out. And they also noted that there's a very famous piece of 9/11 predictive programming from Supertramp where it has a glass of orange juice superimposed over the Twin Towers. So, I don't know. Make of that what you will. All right, we have been here for a couple of hours. We have 239 people. Let's look at the numbers. I want to say thanks to everyone who's listening. And I want to also invite you to the chats. So if you want to participate in the live chats, or you want to be involved in the Discord server, or attend the AutoHoaxCon Zoom conference, go to ips.monster and subscribe. The next one, by the way, is going to be live streamed. We will have it on Zoom, specifically for those who are part of the Q&A and part of the discussions, but I'm going to have it on all the live streams. But if you want to participate in chat, you'll want to join Zoom. So there's a link. Subscribe there. We have 137 on Twitter at the IPS Think Tank, half a dozen in DLive, 95 on the IPS main channel. We have 20 in Odyssey, Twitch, and I estimate about 60 between Paranormal Radio, Radio King, TuneIn, and Radio.net. So I would put us at about 280 at this time. Patricia Steer says, I believe the mafia used to hurt someone by beating them with bags of oranges. Well, this orange connection cements this Donald Trump as Mafia Don thing they've superimposed over him. Abad Don, or Abaddon, happens to be one of the names in Revelation 9/11, the angel over the bottomless pit, and all these fascinating connections. But this is another link with the same director. And you cannot separate Megalopolis from 9/11 for a few reasons. One, they delayed the movie because 9/11 happened. And the movie was about New York getting 9/11, getting hit by a piece of space junk from a Russian satellite. And I think the implication is it's intentional. But that's why he had to delay it for these many years. And in the movie, it contains footage from September the 11th. So he's 100% insider, meta-scripter, and there are elements of this movie that tie into this Trump head wound thing pretty blatantly. And the fact that that actor, Adam Driver, is the face of White Noise, Palestine, Ohio, Toxic Airborne Event, 42 miles from Butler. Yeah, this is all very well integrated. But anyway, yeah, thanks for joining. Again, I would recommend signing up. You don't want to miss the next live chat. And if you did miss it, I'm going to premiere it. Armin Reese sent me the video. So I'm going to premiere it on the main channel at some point, likely tomorrow morning. So you can look forward to that if you missed it. And then, of course, I'll put a link so you can catch the next ones. And, this is Auto Hoax by Chief Crow. Thank you for all the comments and calls as usual.
I'm on Auto Hoax and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes.
My buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996. 96, y'all. Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'm gonna be an Auto Hoax. Auto Hoax, and it feels so good. Yeah. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dreams.